Yep, I'm ready to go.
All right, go ahead, Joe. I'll give you a quick introduction and then we'll get started. All right, my name is Anthony Belcito. Thank you everyone for calling in or participating today. We're here for an information session and public statement hearing for case 21T0340. We'll start with a short presentation about the Article 7 review process by Department of Public Service staff, followed by a short presentation of the applicant's particular proposal here by Krista Roberts of the New York Power Authority. And then at 6 o'clock, we will start the public statement hearing. And with that, I will turn the microphone over to Norina Chowdhury of DPS staff. Please begin.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here this evening. So we are going to give a brief overview of the Public Service Law Article 7, which is what governs the siting of major electric transmission facilities. Next slide. So the major electric lines that are subject to Article 7 are lines that are either 120 kilovolts or kV or more and 1 mile or longer, or they're 100 kilovolts or more and 10 miles or longer. And this particular project, the SmartPath Connect project, we will rebuild approximately 100 miles of existing 230 kV line. Next slide. So Article 7 was established in 1970, and at that time it was a new facility siting procedure designed to minimize impacts. So that was both environmental impacts, including things like forest clearing, impacts to streams and wetlands and habitat, land use conflicts, agricultural land disturbance, historic resources, minimizing impacts to quality of life, and that includes things like construction disturbance, traffic, dust, operating effects, environmental magnetic fields or EMF, noise, visual impacts, and it provided a forum for resolution of issues, and those are issues like, the location of the line and matters of local law. Next slide. And so Article 7 provides for an open process with the involvement of state agencies, municipalities, citizen intervener groups. And although Article 7 is not subject to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, it does require an environmental analysis, and it requires impact minimization, and as mentioned, allows for public participation in the process. Next slide, please. So an Article 7 application is required to include fairly extensive information that includes the location of the facilities, any potential alternatives, environmental impacts, applicable local ordinances, any other pending filings with other state or federal agencies, the costs of the proposed facility, descriptions of the proposed line, engineering justifications, and similar information. The application is also required to include intervener funding. Next slide, please. And so an application for an Article 7 project will be served on the municipalities, and that includes counties, cities, towns, and villages, state legislators, state agencies, and it is typically available at local libraries, and this particular application is available at the local libraries in the impacted towns, and it is also available online on the Commission's website, which is dps.ny.gov. Next slide. So more on this process. Each Article 7 application or project is docketed by the Public Service Commission, which is the decision-making body for Article 7 reviews. It will be docketed on the Document and Matter Management System, or DMM, under a particular case number. So the case number for this project is 21T0340. And you will also have assigned to each particular proceeding Department of Public Service staff, and the Department of Public Service is the agency that works for the chair, is essentially, the staff arm of the commission. And the staff that you'll see assigned typically is engineers, environmental staff, economists, legal counsel, consumer outreach specialists, and administrative law judges. And if you'd like more information on the related proceeding that was already addressed by the commission, in addition to the case where this is docketed, the 21T0340, you can find information about the Smart Path line in case 18T0207. And then the parties to an Article 7 proceeding usually include, well, they always include the applicant, and then in addition to the applicant, they usually include, various state agencies, including the Department of Environmental Conservation, the Department of Agriculture and Markets. You'll have staff from the Department of Public Service, and you will also have others that may request intervener status to be a party to the proceeding. And those interveners are usually municipalities where a line is proposed, residents of those municipalities, environmental and public interest groups, or utility companies that, while not the applicants themselves, are impacted by the proposed line. Next slide. And the parties to these proceedings have certain rights and responsibilities as parties. So they must comply with all procedural rules of the commission, and they have to comply with all directives from the administrative law judge. But as a party, they have the right to engage in discovery, the right to present expert testimony, participate in evidentiary hearings, file motions and legal briefs, and participate in settlement negotiations if those occur. Next slide. And as I briefly mentioned before, there's a required intervener fund. So applicants are required to establish this intervener fund, and the particular amount of the funding varies based on the facility voltage and the location, and that's whether or not it's located within an existing right-of-way. And these funds are available to municipal and other parties to allow them to retain expert witnesses, consultants, lawyers, and just generally contribute to the commission making an informed decision on the appropriateness of the site and the facility that's being proposed. And in this particular case, the applicants here did provide the required intervener funding in the amount of $450,000. And if you go to DMM and look up this particular case number, you will see the various applications for funding that have been received. At least half of the intervener fund is available for municipal parties, and the remainder of that fund is then available to other parties that may seek to intervene in the proceeding. If an applicant substantially changes or amends an application after the funding is awarded, additional funding may be required to account for those changes. And more information about the particulars of intervener funding can be found in the Commission's regulations and through guides available on the Commission website. And while the funds can be used for legal fees, they may not be used for legal challenges of the Commission decision. Next slide. So here's some information on the typical Article 7 case process. So prior to the application even being filed, there will be newspaper notices in the impacted municipalities to alert the public, and then the application will be filed. Once the application is filed, it may be supplemented before the secretary to the commission determines that the application is complete or the information that is required by commission regulations has been provided. After the application is complete, which in this case was in late December 2021, public statement hearings must be held within 60 to 90 days after it is complete. And in this case, the post-statement hearing, one was already held this afternoon, and the second one will begin at 6 p.m. this evening. And then, following the public statement hearings, you'll typically have the procedural conference. Next slide. And so this is some information about the typical steps if you follow the litigation track during an Article 7 proceeding. So early on, you will have the identification of any potential alternative routes and the pre-filed direct testimony from the applicant. You may also have, rebuttal testimony from any of the parties, evidentiary hearings, site visits, briefing, a recommended decision from the administrative law judge, briefs on exception in which the parties respond to that recommended decision before ultimately you would have a decision from the commission on the application. And in this proceeding, there is not yet a schedule for these steps following the direct testimony, but the applicants, New York Power Authority and National Grid, did file their pre-filed direct testimony with their initial application on June 15th, 2021. Next slide. And here's a bit more on the process. That during the litigated track, there are typically 3 stages, and those are the evidentiary phase, the briefing phase, and the decision phase. In 2020, Article 7 was amended to require that the commission decision on an Article 7 application be issued within 12 months after that application is deemed complete, or that letter I mentioned goes out informing the applicants that the application is complete. And so that means that all 3 phases, evidentiary, briefing, and decision, must happen within that 12-month time frame. However, if settlement negotiations commence, the 12-month clock would be told, and then the amount of time for which the clock is told would then be tacked on to that 12-month deadline. During the evidentiary phase, if you're on the litigated track, you will have the applicant presenting their direct case, as well as the other parties presenting their direct cases, and then the rebuttal. And proposed settlements could occur during that stage. The parties are also able to exchange discovery requests during the evidentiary phase. Following the evidentiary phase, you would go into the briefing phase, where the parties will summarize the evidence and arguments and help put forward their cases. Next slide, please. And then you would get into the decisional phase, and at that point, the administrative law judge will issue a recommended decision or may issue a recommended decision. And the parties typically have the opportunity to respond to that recommended decision. So they could dispute the conclusions that have been reached by the administrative law judge, and then the conclusions that have been reached by the other parties. And that ultimately culminates in the commission reviewing everything that has been put before them and making a decision in which they issue an order explaining that decision on the overall application. Once the commission decision is made, parties could appeal those decisions through a rehearing within 30 days after the commission issues that decision, and only parties to the proceedings may appeal a decision. Next slide, please. And in the commission's decision, if the commission decides to grant approval for the project, the commission is required to make certain findings, and those include the basis of the need for the facility, the nature of the probable environmental impacts, and that the facility minimizes environmental impacts on agricultural lands, wetlands, parks, rivers, and other items, and it gives consideration to both cost and alternative routes. Next slide. And the commission must also determine that the facility has minimum adverse impacts on active farming operations, what part, if any, they may decide needs to be underground, that the proposed project will conform with the long-range electric plan, and that it conforms with state and local laws and regulations. However, the commission may waive unreasonably restrictive local ordinances, laws, or requirements. And as a couple of examples, an unreasonably restrictive local ordinance may be one that restricts the maximum height of a building, and then that could be found to be unreasonably restrictive if the utility poles will exceed that height. Another instance could be where a local law restricts the type of fencing or signage that could be used, but that particular fencing or signage is required for the project because of public safety reasons. In those instances, the commission could decide to waive the local laws. The commission's findings are also required to determine that the facility will serve the public interest, convenience, and necessity. Next slide. So in reviewing an Article 7 application, the commission may deny an application, grant a certificate with appropriate conditions, and those conditions could be related to environmental impact mitigation, alternative locations, alternative designs. The commission may also approve a proposed settlement if there is one, or they could deny the application if they ultimately determine, the facility is not needed or cannot make the findings that are required under Article 7. Next slide. So following a commission approval, assuming that the commission does approve the application and grant an Article 7 certificate, at that point, certificate holder will be required to provide very detailed plans that are called the Environmental Management and Construction Plans, or EM&CP. And those plans would include everything that would be needed to construct the project. And these plans, the EM&CP, will be posted and available for public review. And the copies of the EM&CP are distributed in the same manner that the initial Article 7 application is distributed to allow the public to review them. And there may be comments from the parties to the proceeding or the public, and then the commission must ultimately approve of the EM&CP plans, and they may condition that approval as appropriate. Next slide. During this phase in which you have the EM&CP and you receive that approval and the construction is commencing, you will also see the certificate holder, the one that was an applicant that now has that certificate, working on acquiring rights-of-way and access, constructing the project as approved through their EM&CP plans. And that includes activities like clearing and grading and facility construction. You'll see them implementing the environmental controls that would have been required through their plans. And within the EM&CP, you'll also see the requirements in the plans for restoration. And as things go forward, you will also see continuing work that includes the right-of-way management, and that will continue forward into the future in accordance with the current, at that time, right-of-way management plan that has been approved by the commission. Next slide, please. So again, if you would like to review this application, you can find it on the commission's website, dps.ny.gov. And if you add a /article VII, you will get directly to the Article 7 page on the commission's website with more information. You can also search on the commission's website for this particular case number, which is, again, 21T0340. On the commission's website, you will also find a guide to the Article 7 certification review process, links to other Article 7 cases, the Article 7 regulations, and some other helpful information. Next slide, please. And if you would like to make a comment on this project, you can do so by making a statement at the public statement hearing that will follow this information session, writing to the Public Service Commission at the address that's on that slide right now. You can email the commission by emailing the secretary at dps.ny.gov. You can call the comment line on the number shown, and you can also provide comments through DMM, the Document Matter Management System. Just note that if you call the comment line, those comments will be summarized and posted to DMM and will not be transcribed word for word, whereas the other ones, if you provide written comments, your written comments will be posted and available on DMM. If you would like to see the comments others have provided, you can find those under the Public Comment tab on DMM. And please note that if you provide comments through any of these means, that you should make sure to include the case number, which again is 21T0340. So thank you all for joining us and participating in this process.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll have a short presentation from Krista Roberts, a representative from the New York Power Authority. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Your Honor. Hello, I'm Krista Roberts. I'm Manager of Licensing in the Project Development and Licensing Group at NYPA. I'm part of the team that developed the Article 7 application for the SmartPath Connect project. My goal this evening is to provide you with a high-level overview of this transformative project, which is needed to improve the resiliency of the New York State electric grid and more efficiently transport renewable generated power through the state. In fact, the SmartPath Connect project was selected by the Public Service Commission to facilitate the advancement of the state's clean energy goals. Before I get into the details of the project, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on the Power Authority. We are the largest state-owned public power organization in the nation. We own and operate 16 generating facilities and 1,400 miles of transmission line throughout the state. We finance our operations through our electricity revenue, so no taxpayer dollars or state credit are used for our projects. And we have completed over 6,000 energy efficiency projects statewide, with more underway. Our co-participant in the project, National Grid, currently delivers electricity and natural gas to more than 20 million people in New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. They provide electric service to approximately 1.7 million customers in Eastern, Central, Northern, and Western New York. And in New York, National Grid owns and operates more than 6,500 miles of transmission lines, including approximately 500 miles of 230 kV lines, about 700 miles of 345 kV lines, and over 700 substations. National Grid has owned, operated, and maintained the Adirondack to Porter lines that are part of this project for the past 60 years. So now I wanted to go over a little bit of background on the development of the project and how we got here today. And we saw some of these dates earlier, but in April of 2020, New York State approved the Accelerated Renewable Energy Growth and Community Benefit Act, which directed NYPA to propose transmission line projects that are needed to help meet the state's clean energy goals. And then in July of 2020, NYPA filed its petition for a priority transmission project with the PSC. In October of 2020, PSC designated the SmartPath Connect project as a priority project that should move forward under the Article 7 process. So then in March 2021, National Grid was selected as our co-participant. In June of last year, we filed our application, and in December of last year, we received the application completeness determination. So what is this SmartPath Connect project we've been talking about? Well, we have about 100 miles of transmission line rebuild. We're rebuilding and upgrading the lines to either 230 or 345 kV. We have upgrades and replacements of about 10 substations, including construction of about 4 new substations. The northern alignment of the project that you see runs generally from Messina to Clinton, and that consists of NYPA's transmission and substation components. The southern part of the project runs from Krogan to Marcy, and that consists of National Grid's transmission and substation components, as well as 2 NYPA substations. Now, both parts of the project will connect to NYPA's SmartPath project that's currently under construction, which runs in the gap that you see from Messina to Krogan. What are some of the goals of the project? Well, we're improving the existing asset condition. In some cases, the poles and wires are over 50 years old. We'll be increasing the transmission system resilience to severe weather events and upgrading from wood to steel poles and to current design standards. And the project will create local jobs and opportunities for suppliers during construction. Smart Path Connect project again has several components. The northern alignment and NYPA's portion generally runs from Messina to Clinton and traverses the towns that you see here listed on the slide. The first part of the project is approximately 36 miles of transmission rebuild from Messina to Willis Substation in Chateaugay, with about 400 structures being constructed. The second part is about 9 miles of rebuild between Chateaugay and Clinton, with about 130 structures to be constructed. And the existing wood and H-frame structures in the existing corridor will be replaced with steel monopoles. And for this part of the project, we also have work at our existing substations, seen with the gray dots here, along with the new Haverstock substation constructed outside of Messina, and a new Willis substation being constructed next to the existing one in Chateaugay. The southern part of the project primarily consists of the upgrade of National Grid's Adirondack to Porter 230 kV line to 345 kV. And there are approximately 55 miles of existing right-of-way between Krogan and Marcy, traversing the towns you see listed here on the slide. There will be about 645 new 345 kV steel monopole structures, again installed along the existing transmission lines, replacing the existing 230 kV wooden H-frame structures. In addition, there's an approximately 1 mile extension to an existing 230 kV circuit comprising roughly 12 new 230 steel kV monopoles. That's in the same corridor in the vicinity of Austin Road and the new Austin Road substation. NYPA's work in this southern portion of the project includes the construction of a new Adirondack substation next to the existing station in Krogan, as well as a small expansion of our existing Marcy substation within the NYPA-owned property in Marcy. So what will these upgrades look like? Well, at the top of the diagram are the existing transmission lines as they are configured today. As you can see, the existing transmission lines are made of those wooden H-frames, and each structure is about 550 feet away from the next. At the bottom of the diagram is our proposed design, and the transmission lines generally will remain in the existing right-of-way, but the structures will be further apart from each other, about 700 to 900 feet instead of the existing 550 feet. Longer distance between the spans, along with the steel monopoles instead of the H-frames, will give a more streamlined appearance and reduce our actual footprint on the ground, reducing the visual clutter as you look down the right-of-way. And then you may want to note here that the existing right-of-way width is going to remain the same. So continuing on, the upper left diagram here represents a portion of the line from Chateaugay to Clinton, which consists of 2 double circuit 230 kV lines. The upper right diagram represents the structures on the remainder of that line, which will consist of a single circuit and a double circuit 230 kV lines. Bottom diagram represents how the majority of the transmission lines will look along the rest of both the northern and southern segments of the project, with 2 single circuit structures designed to operate at 345 kV. To give you a quick overview on some of the permitting efforts for the project, as we heard going through, the project is currently being reviewed through the Article 7 process that we heard about earlier. We have our environmental management and construction plan that's in development, and that will describe how the project is being built and how we are avoiding or minimizing our impact to the landscape. And as we heard, our regulating agencies provide input throughout the Article 7 and EM&C process, and the public has the opportunity to provide comment and input through the process as well, such as at our session here today. Our public outreach efforts to date include a series of public outreach webinars. Those were held in April of 2021. NYPA and National Grid notified our affected landowners of the filing of the project's application, and as well as of this session today. We've set up phone numbers and hotlines where the public can contact us that you see here. And we also have set up a project website where project information can be found. Public outreach is ongoing in the field and will continue throughout the life of the project. So now I'd like to provide a brief overview of some of the activities that you may see during construction. Construction, again, will take place primarily within the existing right-of-way, but that includes a wide range of areas, each with their own challenges. We hope that the following photos will provide an understanding of how the work will be done and how we do limit our impacts to landowners and the environment to the greatest extent possible. So what can you expect to see during construction? Establish our laydown yards for equipment and materials. We'll lay out our erosion sediment controls and coordinate access with the landowners. See the access road construction and installation of the foundations. Following that will be the construction of the actual structures, followed by helicopters assisting with pulling in the wire. And then finally, you'll see site restoration after construction is complete and the lines in service. So here are a couple pictures of what typical storage yards may look like. And these yards are usually off-site from the right-of-way at a commercial or private property, leased by either the company or the contractor. The photo on the left here shows the temporary matting and equipment used to place that matting for the access roads through the wetlands or agricultural properties. Note the silt fence, which is the dark black line around the perimeter of the site. This delineates the usable area of the site and controls runoff from impacting off-site resources. This silt fence or other erosions and sediment control measures will be used throughout the project, and as described in our EM and CP. The photo on the right here provides a good view of a laydown yard for all of the structure components. This has the poles, the arms, wire, and a lot of the other equipment that'll be used during construction. And here we want to show a couple pictures of how timber mats are moved to the project. And access road construction is likely one of the first activities that you'll see. The photo on the left shows the over-the-road truck that delivers the matting to the site, with the orange piece of equipment behind it placing the mats in the right-of-way. The photo on the right shows the off-road equipment that's used to move the mats further back into the areas of the right-of-way that can't be easily accessed. Here gives a good overview of the mats once they're in place along the right-of-way, and some examples of the foundation installation on the right. So on the left, again, there's a good view of the project limits of disturbance that uses both existing gravel roads, you can see on the right in this picture, and then the matted roads coming off of that to the individual work areas. And our equipment is confined to these roads. The roads and pads are designed to be just big enough to accommodate the equipment and go directly to where they're actually needed for the work, leaving much of the right-of-way undisturbed, which you can see here. At the bottom of the photo, you can also see the road goes by an existing atrium structure. That's the one to be removed, and then it moves on to the work pad where a new structure is going to be constructed. So again, we try to make the best use of our layout on these roads. The photo on the right shows you what a typical drill rig looks like. This is one of the first pieces of construction equipment that you'll see once our roads are in. Drill rigs are used to drill the holes for the foundations, which can range from 30 inches and up to 12 feet wide, depending on the type of foundation, and they can be up to 60 feet or more in the ground. So for structure assembly, we generally have two types of foundations on the project, either direct embed, which is seen here on the left. The hole has been dug here, and then the pole's being lowered in into the hole, and then will be backfilled as construction continues. The other type of foundation is a poured concrete foundation, where the hole's dug and then a rebar cage, an anchor bolt cage are put in the hole, filled with concrete, and then the structure sits on top of and is attached to that anchor bolt cage. The photo on the right here shows construction progressing and the top of a structure being moved into position. So again, these are typical for what we may see on our project. As I mentioned before, we also do use helicopters during construction to assist with the wire pulling. The photo on the left shows how once the structure is up, we use the helicopter to first pull in a nylon rope, which then pulls in a cable that's then used to pull in the conductor. The helicopter comes along and clips in the line into pulleys that you can see on the structure there. Using that process, we can cover about 3 to 6 miles at a clip with the helicopter, and there's no impact on the ground at that point, since we're just flying to each structure, and limits environmental impact because we don't have to have crews at each structure and climbing each structure. The photo in the middle here shows that when there may be an issue with a pulley or whatnot, as the rope's being pulled in or the wire's being pulled in, sometimes we have to get a line person out there, so we fly them in to the structure to take care of that issue, and then we can move on with our wire pulling. Once the wire is in, the photo on the right is showing the cable cars that are used during final clipping in of the wire, and here the personnel are installing spacers on the cable to prevent the lines from slapping into each other during wind or other storm events. So as for our construction schedule, we are hoping to get our Article 7 and EM&C approvals in place later this year to start construction. We do intend to have the project in service by the end of 2025. As I mentioned before, public outreach continues throughout the project. If you do have any questions or would like to reach someone to discuss the project team can be reached at the phone numbers, email, and website shown here. And then with that, turn it back over to you, Judge.
Thank you very much. At this point, that's the end of the presentations. We do have about 20 minutes before the public statement hearing starts. If we have any questions about the process this evening or the Article 7 process in general, I'm happy to try to answer them now. Please just raise your hand electronically or press *3 if you are a call-in user. And I don't see any raised hands or unmuted phones. So again, we will start the public statement hearing right at 6 o'clock. And again, if I don't see any questions until then, we'll stay on the line. But other than that, we'll be back at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the information session and public statement hearing for the New York Power Authority and National Grid Article 7 Transmission Siting Proceeding, Case 20T0340. Your line is muted upon entry. The information session has ended and the hearing will begin at 6 p.m. For any technical difficulties, please contact us at 1-800-342-3330, and our technical support people will help you get to on the website or on the WebEx via the computer. This message is for those who entered in by phone, and I will repeat it once more closer we get to 6 o'clock. Again, the phone number for anybody who wants to join electronically and cannot get in is 1-800-342-3330. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the information session and public statement hearing for New York Power Authority National Grid, Article 7, Transmission Siting Proceeding, Case 21T0340. The public statement hearing portion of today's event will begin at 6 p.m. Your line has been muted upon entry. The information session has passed, and the hearing again will begin shortly. For any technical difficulties, please call 1-800-342-3330. That's 1-800-342-3330. 830. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. This is Commissioner Majori.
Good evening, Commissioner Majori. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Hi, it's Diane
Very
Berman, too.
Hi, Diane Berman. How are you, Commissioner?
Good, thank you.
Nice to hear your voices. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, folks. Welcome to the information session and public statement hearing for New York Power Authority and National Grid Article 7 transmission siting proceeding. The case number is 21T0340. Your line has been muted upon entry. The information session has been concluded and the hearing will begin shortly at 6 p.m. For any technical difficulties you may be experiencing, you can call 1-800-342-3330. That's 1-800-342-3330. Thank you. We will begin shortly.
Hello, this is Tony Belcito, Administrative Law Judge with the New York State Department of Public Service. We are here for a public statement hearing for case 21T0340. Mr. Hubbard, are you ready?
I am ready.
Excellent. We'll go on the record.
Okay, one moment. Okay, we are on the record.
I call case 21T0340, application of New York Power Authority and Niagara Mohawk Power Corporation doing business as National Grid for a certificate of environmental compatibility and public need for the rebuild of approximately 100 linear miles of existing 230 kV to either 230 kV or 345 kV, along with associated substation upgrades along the existing NYPA Moses Willis 1 and 2 and Willis Patnoid, Willis Ryan, and National Grid's Adirondack, Porter 11, 12, and 13 lines in Clinton, Franklin, St. Lawrence, Lewis, and Oneida counties, New York. Good evening. We are here today for a public statement hearing that was noticed on January 11th, 2022. This public statement hearing concerns an application by New York Power Authority, or NYPA, and Niagara Mohawk Power Corporation doing business as National Grid for a certificate of environmental compatibility and public need for an electric transmission project in Clinton, Franklin, St. Lawrence, Lewis, and Oneida counties. The project includes upgrading several existing circuits to increase power transfer capabilities throughout northern New York. My name is Anthony Belcito. I'm an administrative law judge for the Department of Public Service. I am presiding over the hearings in this case and the development of a record in this proceeding. Also with us this evening are Public Service Commissioners Diane Berman and John Majori, who will be listening to your comments today. The application is being reviewed pursuant to Article 7 of the Public Service Law. Prior to the construction, the applicants must obtain a certificate of environmental compatibility and public need from the Public Service Commission. This public statement hearing is being held to receive comment on whether the Commission should grant such a certificate. The purpose of this hearing is to provide you with an opportunity to tell the Commission your thoughts on the proposed project. The statements you make today will become part of the case record. The hearing is being recorded and a transcript of it will be included in the official record of this proceeding. This hearing is not an evidentiary hearing or a question and answer session, but rather a forum to hear comments from members of the public. This is not the only opportunity for public comment. If you did not register to speak at today's hearing, but you would like to add comments to the record, there are other ways to comment. You can submit comments on the Commission's website by email, regular mail, or by phone. Regardless of how the comments are submitted, they are given equal consideration. As stated in the notice, we ask people to register if they want to make a statement at today's hearing. People are allowed to register either electronically or through phone. Whether you register by phone or electronically, you should only have audio input from one device. Otherwise, problems with feedback may occur. All of you were muted upon entry to the hearing, and I will call people that have registered to speak one by one. And only that person's line will be unmuted. For people participating by telephone, when I call your name, press *3 on your phone so that we can recognize you and unmute your line. It may take a moment for us to locate you and unmute your line. Please make sure you wait until you hear a beep or are notified that you have been unmuted before you speak. If you have unmuted your own telephone, please do not forget to unmute your end of the line. For people participating electronically, after I call your name, we will unmute your line. You should hear a tone and see that the microphone icon is no longer red. Please remember that if you have muted your line on your end, you will need to unmute it on your end. Please speak slowly and clearly so that the court reporter can accurately capture your statement for the record. When your line is unmuted, please state your name, and if you are speaking on behalf of an organization, the name of the organization. Once we confirm that we can hear you, you can proceed to your comments. The first speaker registered and only registered speaker we have for this evening is Patricia Pritchard. Is Patricia on the line? And if you're a call-in, please press *3. Ms. Pritchard?
I don't see any raised hands, Your Honor.
Okay. Because we do not have any other registered users, I will open the floor to any other participants who would like to make a comment today. If there are any call-in users or folks on the WebEx call or WebEx online, please raise your hand or press *3 and we will allow you to make a comment. If not, we will go off the record, but stick around until 6:15 to see if anybody changes their mind or joins the call. Any hands, Joe?
Not that I can see, Your Honor. Remember, folks, you need to hit *3 on your telephone or go to the corner of your screen if you did not pre-register, and you see a little hand down there in the corner, just like what's displayed on the screen here. And if you click on that hand, it'll raise your hand on the computer and it'll put you in a spot where I can see you. If you want to make a statement, you need to either hit *3 or hit the raised hand feature in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Not seeing anybody, Your Honor.
Okay, then Howard, we'll go off the record for the time being, and we'll stick around here until 6:15 to see if anybody changes their mind or shows up.
Okay, one moment. Okay, we are now off the record.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, this is Tony Belcito again. I don't think I saw anyone join the call. So I will ask again if there's anyone on the line who would like to make a public statement this evening. Please raise your hand electronically using the WebEx or hit *3 on your phone and we will unmute your line.
I see no raised hand, gentlemen.
Okay. Howard, can we go back on the record for just a brief minute to wrap up, please?
Sure, one moment. Okay, we're back on the record.
All right, I want to thank everyone for their participation this evening. Please let the record show that we had one registered speaker who did not call in, and when asked, no one participating in the call or via the WebEx expressed an interest in making a statement. So again, thank you everyone who did participate today. We want to thank the Department of Public Service Office of Consumer Service staff for administrating this session and our court reporter for helping getting it recorded. The hearing is now concluded and we are off the record.
Okay, one moment. Okay, we are off the record.
All right. Again, thank you everyone for calling in and participating today. I appreciate the commissioner's attendance, and I will see the parties tomorrow at the procedural conference via WebEx.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Have a good
Thanks.
evening, everyone.
Everybody
Thanks,
have a good evening.